Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Erin Ferguson and this is my vlog series about creating the art for a 2D video game. And it's been a little while since I've actually shown my face on camera because I never feel like putting on makeup, and also the lighting in our office is really bad. It's like north facing, only one window, and so I have to set up like a couple of lamps just to for picture quality, and I never feel like doing that. But today I actually put on makeup today, which I don't always do. And I'm wearing my hair down, so it's like, somebody is going to appreciate this. It's gonna be you. And in today's video, I am actually going to be drawing plants, so it's a little bit of a change of pace from what I've been doing for the last little while. If you've been watching my videos, recently I've been drawing a lot of furniture. I've been working on a lot of interior spaces, and today's video is gonna be a little different because I am drawing a whole bunch of plants that we can use basically to tie everything together, to tie the whole city together. And I'm going to go ahead and show you, I'm going to show you kind of what I've been working on. I've been doing a big mock-up for the town, for the whole city, and so I've got all of the exteriors of all the buildings done, but now I need to do like decorations and things like that, to make the town feel like a cohesive whole. So I've got the buildings, but I need things like park benches and fountains and landscaping. And in today's video, I'm going to be drawing those plants for you to see. But before I do that, I just want to show you what I've been working on because it's pretty cool. Hold tight. Okay, so this is probably going to be a little fuzzy because, of course, you're looking at a screen through another screen. So, just use your imagination a bit. But I want you to appreciate this mock-up here because this is the result of months of work. A lot of it you've seen on my channel. Like, you might recognize that cathedral, which I drew for one of the videos. And a lot of these buildings, you haven't seen me draw the exteriors, but you may have seen me draw the interiors if you've been watching some of the other videos. And so we've got like, the workshop, and we've got the musician's house and the tavern, and there's some other little homes there that I don't think I've made videos about, but I will be giving a grand tour when everything's up and running. I will actually show you what everything looks like in-game. But as you can see, I know it's fuzzy, but you can see I've got all of those plants in place, and the benches, and the fountain, and all of that stuff, which I've been working on all of this week. And so today's video, I'm going to be specifically looking at all the plants. And so give me a second, and I'll go ahead and switch over to that footage, and I'll talk to you about what I did. So I was just realizing that a whole video about drawing plants might be less than appealing for a lot of you. It's not, it's not as exciting for most people as say character design or even environment design or world building or whatever. But for our game, at least, it's actually pretty important. So if you've been watching this channel for a while, if you've seen any of my other videos, I think I've mentioned that we do have seasons in our game. And so the environment does have to change to reflect that. And figuring out how to make that work has been and is an ongoing sort of trial and error process. So I may have mentioned before, I'm sure I've mentioned before, I do have some formal art training, but I have no formal video game training. I do not and never have worked for a video game company. This is a personal project through and through, and a lot of what we've done, we've learned to do just through trial and error. And of course, the occasional help of things like YouTube. Thank goodness, what did we do before YouTube, right? So, so things like, for example, we were trying to figure out how to make the seasons change with the most minimal work. There's a whole lot of different angles you could go at that from. And of course, the most labor intensive basically would be to draw brand new sprites for every plant and every object that needs to change with the seasons. Of course, I'm not insane. I'm not totally insane, believe it or not. And so, there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of get around that. So, for example, with some of our trees, we can actually just change the color of the trees in Unity, which is what we use actually to make our game. We're using Unity. And so for some things, it's as simple as that. We can just change the color. So example, our trees, like the harvestable trees that you can cut down, we can change them from green to orange. Boom, instant autumn. But there are other things, what are you going to do in the winter? What are you going to do in the winter? You basically have no choice but to redraw it. So finding a balance between, you know, what you choose to redraw and other little tricks, you know, that you can use to make it to give the appearance and the feeling of changing seasons for the most minimal amount of work. I mean, finding a balance between all of those things is pretty tough, actually. And one thing, of course, we realized is a lot of the ground planes, a lot of our ground tiles, which I think it was last week, I actually made a tutorial video for how to make like tileable textures. So if you're interested in actually making a game, go ahead and check out that video, because there is, I did make a tutorial for those of you who are interested. But we realized, you know, a lot of our ground textures are going to have to change to snow. So a lot of the dirt and the grass, those sorts of textures are going to have to change. So I had to, you know, have to do a snow texture, and that's not too hard to do. But things like, you know, we're working on this town, and I want it to be all of the buildings to have landscaping. And I also want the landscaping, I don't want it to be, because the seasons are so important to this game and just the way that you operate your farm and or your kingdom, well, the farm on your kingdom, the things you plant, the animals you raise, it's very important. The seasons have a huge effect on that. And so I don't want everything to be stagnant. So one thing that I decided to do was kind of to treat the seasons, the plants that we have to change seasonally. This is an experiment, we'll see how it works, but I'm thinking to treat them almost like an animation. So right now what I'm doing, what you're watching me do, is I am basically drawing all of this, the first frame for all of these plants, the spring frame. So I'm kind of imagining it like, you'll see one frame for all of spring, and then in summer it'll change to the next frame, and for fall it'll change to the next frame, and winter it'll change to the next. Now I don't know if that'll work, but this is the idea that I have, basically, is to kind of treat the plants like an animation, so they will change every season. And so right now I am working on the spring plants, and I'm doing them in a whole row, and one thing that I'm trying to vary is I want each season to have, you know, its own sort of color scheme, but I'm trying to get away with not redrawing the plants. As much as possible, I want to basically keep the plants the same from season to season and really utilize color. One thing that I do change, of course, we've got, at the very bottom, I drew some tulips. And each season I do change those flowers out for like a completely different flower. Just seasonally, I have tulips for spring, I did sunflowers for summer, chrysanthemums for fall, and crocus for winter. And so those are the four that I do completely change out. But everything else, I pretty much try and just alter it through colors. So my sort of spring color scheme was like a pink, purple, for the flowers, for the most part, are pink and purple, and then the foliage is kind of like an Easter green blue, just really light and almost pastel. And the summer, it doesn't change a whole lot. I do change the colors of some of the flowers. I go for more of a yellow and red sort of color for the flowers, and then the foliage all becomes more of a deep green with more hints of like warm yellow. And for the fall, of course, everything in the fall changes, and pretty much everything becomes, you know, really warm tones. So we have, you know, orange and red, and then I use a lot of like really rich purples for the fall. And winter, that was the trickier one. So the question with the winter foliage was, do I draw everything dead? Do I redraw it so everything is dead? Or redraw it, you know, it's just big lumps of snow? You know, how do I make it look like winter has come with the least amount of work, least amount of redrawing? And I did do some redrawing. So for example, I took some of the flowers, some of the bushes that had flowers on them, I replaced the flowers with like, with berries or something else instead. But I pretty much decided that all of these, I was going to keep most of the plants intact, except that I wanted them to look like they were frosted over. If you've ever been outside in the winter after there's been a really pretty frost, when the frost just clings to everything, that's kind of what I was going for. So I basically just kind of changed the colors. A lot of these plants would be totally dead, lose all of their leaves in the winter, but I'm just choosing to ignore that, and instead I am just making everything look like it is covered in frost. So I changed the colors to like a white and blue color scheme, and I actually think it was like surprisingly effective. I guess you'll have to see what you think. And hopefully I will be able to get quite a bit of mileage out of these plants. There are certain areas on the map. Every area is going to have its own kind of flora and fauna, but I'm hoping to be able to use these in at least one other kingdom, one of the other human kingdoms, I think for sure. And granted, too, there are areas of the map that probably won't be affected by seasons at all. So we have a desert area, and that area should be up and running for the beta launch of our game. And I imagine that's just pretty much hot year-round. And so I've already drawn a bunch of cactuses and stuff for that area. A bunch of cactuses and succulents and things. And that area probably won't be affected by seasons, so we won't have to worry about that. And the same goes, we've got like an enchanted forest sort of area. And I don't know if that area will be affected by seasons yet or not. I think that's still up for discussion, but it could be affected much more minimally, like it's a more tropical sort of region, and maybe some of the flowers change from season to season, but it doesn't necessarily get completely snowed over. So even though it's a bit of work, for me to do all of these plants for each season, at least I'm hoping to get a fair amount of use out of them to make it, well worth my while. And here in just a second, you'll see me start to draw some ornamental trees. So of course the trees that are, they're in your home kingdom that you can cut down, those will have to change seasonally. But I also wanted some that you can't cut down. I wanted some decorative ones, around the manor house and around town that you're not going to just go take your axe to. And so I'm drawing those too, and of course that will go through a seasonal change as well. And for the spring, I basically made it into a cotton candy tree. I'm picturing it, like those crabapple trees that are just pink and fluffy in the springtime, and they just, look like cotton candy. That's kind of what I was going for. So it's a cotton candy tree basically in the spring, and of course it's green in summer, reddish gold in the fall. And then in the winter, I was trying to decide whether it was just going to be a bare tree and strip all of the leaves off of it. But then again, which would be probably a more accurate representation, but I just didn't like it as well when it was bare, and so I ended up basically just changing the foliage to white, and it just looks like this big powder puff tree. I mean, it looks like it's covered in snow or frost or something, and I think it works. I think I got away with it. I also do some evergreen plants as well, because I figure we're going to want things like junipers and some pine sort of plants that are not going to change at all through the season. So you always have at least a little bit of green, just sort of to offset all of the white or all of the gold or whatever. And so I do some hedges and just a variety. I did a couple that look like they've like topiary that look like they've been actually cut into shape. So I did like sort of a boxy looking one, and one that's more of a pyramid shape, and then I did one that was a little more tall and freeform. And I've got quite a bit of use out of those already too, as I've been doing my mock-ups. Of course I showed you already the mock-up I'm working on for the whole town, and I've used these hedges, these evergreen plants quite a bit. But I also redid the mock-up for the manor house. I had done one before, but if you've been on my Instagram, I can't remember. I don't think I've shown the finished in-game manor house yet. I can't remember. I don't think I have. But if you've been on my Instagram, you've seen that in the original mock-up, at least, there was a big hedge maze in front of the manor, which looked super cool. However, the problem was we figured out pretty quick, by playtesting, that it was kind of annoying to have to walk through the maze every time you wanted to go to the manor house, because you had to walk through the middle of it. And it's not like you had to navigate through the whole maze, you could just cut through the center, but it was just kind of a long, unnecessary walk. But I still thought it was a cool idea, and so what we're doing instead is I made like a garden in the front of the manor house, and in the back there will be the maze. So it's still an area you could visit. I imagine there might be some festivals or events out there, but it's not constantly between you and the front door, basically. And so I redid the mock-up for the manor house with a new garden in the front, and I got a lot of use out of these hedges. And here we go. Last but not least, of course, I am showing you the finished sprite sheets for all of those plants. And I hope that you've enjoyed watching this. Maybe it's given you some ideas for your game. And I'll let you know how it works out. Hopefully it all comes together. But hopefully you've enjoyed this, and wish me luck. Hopefully the plants work out seasonally. And I will be back, of course, next Friday with another video. And until then, enjoy the rest of your week.